They said he was too slow, too soft, too pink. When Kyle Mercer stepped off the transport at Harkoon Prime's elite military training facility, used by 73 species to groom the galaxy's finest warriors, he wore a smile, a patchy beard, and a t-shirt that read, "I paused my game to be here." The silence that met him on the landing pad was broken only by a stifled snort from a 7-foot-tall Laroxian with tusks the size of Kyle's legs. "That's the human," someone muttered. "Is it even armored?" Kyle adjusted his backpack, waved at no one in particular, and promptly tripped on the first step down. A snicker rippled through the crowd of recruits. Some pretended not to notice, others didn't bother, but not Commander Vel Threx. The tenured drillmaster of the Onyx Division had trained assassins who could kill with their shadow. His voice, a bark that made neutron cannons flinch, cracked across the assembly like a whip. "Cadet Mercer, did Earth not teach you to walk?" Kyle picked himself up, dusted off a non-existent speck, and gave a thumbs up. "Actually, we mostly roll around in gaming chairs." A moment of stunned silence. Threx's mandibles twitched. "Oh, it's going to be a long rotation," he growled. The first week was meant to break them. Obstacle courses lined with acid rain, gravity drills that made most cadets vomit their ancestors, and psychological warfare designed to shatter the strongest minds. The Onyx Division didn't coddle, it refined. And Kyle Mercer? He was the worst cadet anyone had ever seen. He ran slow. He lacked claws, venom, telepathy, or any of the 10 accepted forms of galactic combat specialization. He had the lung capacity of a sleepy gerbil and the tactical instincts of an overconfident squirrel. Yet, he didn't quit. When a Florak brute trampled him during a night maneuver, Kyle limped back with a bloody grin and said, "Hey, buddy, you ever heard of dodgeball?" When gravity drills flattened half the squad, Kyle dragged unconscious teammates into the med bay, humming Earth tunes under his breath. And when Threx tried to humiliate him during a live simulation, assigning Kyle the role of civilian liability in a rescue op, the human escaped captivity, hacked the exercise simulation, and locked the other species in their own holding pens. When questioned, Kyle just shrugged. "You said don't get captured. I figured that meant everyone." By week 3, things changed. The squad's top performers, an insectoid tactician named Zell, a warborn Krathron named Glosh, and a sentient fungus known only as Craig, were now watching Kyle instead of laughing. "Why did you double back on the mines during the last drill?" Zell asked one evening, his antennae twitching curiously. Kyle popped a protein bar in his mouth. "I planted them while you were covering the east flank. Figured you'd chase the decoys." "But that wasn't in the mission parameters." Kyle grinned. "Exactly." Commander Threx, watching from a distance, said nothing, but his gaze lingered longer than usual. The humiliation attempt reached its peak during the Omega Gauntlet, a final test designed to expose the weaknesses of every cadet. It combined endurance, tactics, cooperation, and sheer chaos. Threx didn't expect Kyle to finish. He expected him to fail hard enough to discourage Earth from sending another pink-faced amateur for the next decade. But Kyle didn't just finish. He orchestrated the entire squad. When the Krathron's Berserker mode triggered too early, Kyle rerouted the challenge to force cooldown. When Zell's swarm formation collapsed under EMP interference, Kyle jury-rigged a manual neural override with a stolen alien toothbrush and a shoelace. By the time the final bell rang, every cadet was still standing, and they were all following Kyle's orders. After the dust settled, Threx stood before them, his eyes locked on the human. "Explain yourself, Cadet Mercer." Kyle stepped forward. "Well, sir, you put us through every scenario designed to reward strength, precision, and fear, but you forgot the one thing Earth specializes in." Threx narrowed his eyes. "And that is?" "Adaptable chaos," Kyle said, smiling. "You throw us into a mess, we make soup." For a moment, the training ground was quiet. Then Threx turned to the others. "Effective immediately," he said. "Cadet Mercer will serve as acting squad leader of the Onyx Division. All combat drills will run under his command until further notice." Glosh blinked. "Wait, we're taking orders from him?" Kyle patted the Krathron on the arm. "Don't worry, buddy. First command, no more acid drills before breakfast." No one laughed. They just nodded and followed. The next day, the rest of the division watched from the shadows as Kyle led the Onyx unit through tactical drills in his style, which is to say, completely unconventional. Instead of flanking maneuvers, he had them set up fake hot dog stands at key junctions in the simulated city grid. Instead of calling out standard attack formations, he barked things like Operation Burrito Roll and Defense Mode, Sad Platypus, and it worked, because no alien had any idea what the hell he was doing, including the instructors. "Sir," said a confused observer from the training evaluation board, is that Crathron crouching behind a dumpster holding a garden hose?" Commander Vel Threx didn't answer. His gaze stayed locked on Kyle, who was now leading Zell, Glosh, and Craig through a simulated hostage extraction drill using only trash, magnets, and what appeared to be a karaoke machine. When the hostages were secured, the simulation ended. Score, 97.3%, the highest in Onyx Division history. Of course, not everyone was thrilled. "Orders are supposed to be precise," growled Crathron Cadet Glosh later that evening. "You say Sad Platypus. I don't know if that means charge or retreat." Kyle tossed him a homemade flashbang. "It means flank left, toss one of these, then roll over and act like you're emotionally unavailable." "That is not proper protocol." "Exactly." Glosh stared at him, then chuckled. "I hate how much this works." Zell nodded thoughtfully. "I logged our past 5 drills. You've reduced enemy response time by 28% by replacing logical maneuvers with unpredictable chaos." "It's what humans are best at," Kyle said. "Being unpredictable on purpose. You all have rules, traditions, generations of military structure. We've got duct tape and vibes." Craig made a low gurgling noise from the corner. It was probably approval, or hunger. Either way, Kyle tossed him a granola bar. Commander Threx wasn't amused. "You're undermining centuries of tactical discipline," he snapped during a private review session. "I'm winning drills, sir," Kyle replied, sipping his awful protein coffee, "and keeping the squad alive." "You're mocking the system." Kyle leaned forward. "Maybe the system deserves it." Silence. That was the moment Threx realized something dangerous. Kyle wasn't just a smart-ass cadet. He was changing the squad, their tactics, their mindset, their loyalty, and not through fear or rank, but by leading from the middle of the chaos. The next test was live fire, real stakes. Simulated enemies, yes, but real injuries, real consequences. The test was codenamed Ash Protocol, a no-win scenario designed to push squads to the brink. Onyx Division was dropped into a simulated war zone with minimal gear, no intel, and split comms. Traditional squads buckled under the pressure. Kyle's team. They used graffiti to map out enemy positions. They broadcasted fake distress signals in alien love poems to confuse the enemy drones. They tied Craig to a hover sled and yeeted him through a fortified checkpoint while blasting Earth dubstep on every open frequency. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't by the book. But it worked. And when the timer hit 0, every Onyx cadet was accounted for. Breathing, smiling. The simulation tower scoreboard glitched from disbelief before finally displaying the results. Onyx Division, victory, 100%. Threx stood with the evaluation council, arms crossed. "That human," one of the councillors murmured, "is an anomaly." "No," Threx said, "he's a virus." "Then why haven't you expelled him?" Threx watched Kyle high-five a Crathron and chest bump a sentient cube of mist. "Because I want to see what happens next." The next morning, Kyle woke up to a group of cadets outside his quarters, standing at attention. Even Craig, even Zell, who had literally no bones and was somehow saluting with 5 appendages. "What the hell is this?" Kyle asked, blinking blearily and brushing crumbs off his shirt. "You've been promoted," Glosh said, handing him a datapad. "Promoted to what?" "Supreme Chaos Officer." Zell's eyes blinked out of sync. "Squad leader." Kyle froze. "That's not how ranks work," he muttered, thumbing through the datapad. "I didn't even apply." "You didn't have to," Glosh said. "The system updated, based on field efficacy and unconventional leadership under duress." Kyle looked up. You all voted for this, didn't you? Craig burped. Kyle sighed. God help this galaxy. Elsewhere, Commander Threx had his own headache. You promoted him? He barked at the High Marshal's representative. You realize he uses pizza boxes as mission briefings? It's not a traditional promotion, the representative replied coolly. It's experimental. Experimental? The other squads are requesting his training modules. The council is watching. Frankly, the whole station's morale has gone up 11% since he arrived. Threx seethed. Do you know what this means? He hissed. If we let him keep rising, if his style spreads. Yes, the representative said calmly. Threx paused. Yes, he admitted. I know what it means. And that's the problem. Kyle took his new role in the most Kyle way possible. No speeches, no ego. Just a laminated sign on the wall that said, Squad Rule Number 1. If it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid. Followed by, Rule Number 2. Don't die. Rule Number 3. If Craig eats it, you weren't using it right. Their training sessions got weirder and better. They practiced infiltration by pretending to be a delivery service. They tested shield resistance by letting Kyle throw dodgeballs at everyone while yelling, Science. They ran nighttime raids wearing novelty glow-in-the-dark skeleton suits because, according to Kyle, fear is 90% vibe. But Kyle wasn't stupid. He knew eyes were on him. Not just Threx, not just the Council. Other divisions had started requesting transfers into Onyx. Alien cadets who used to laugh at humans now wanted to fight with one. And that meant pressure. High Command didn't like unpredictability. They liked control. So when the emergency alarm blared across the training base, Kyle knew something was up, especially when a drone dropped a sealed mission envelope directly into his hand. He opened it, read the first line, swore loudly. This is a trap, Kyle said flatly. The rest of the squad stared at the classified briefing he'd displayed on the wall. Live operation assessment, joint suppression of Red Zone Outpost Delta 9. Sounds like a promotion test, said Glosh. It's a kill box, Kyle corrected. We're being tested. Hard. Why now? Zell asked. Kyle exhaled. Because we embarrassed the system, and now they want to see if we survive without training wheels. The room went quiet, until Craig let out a warble that somehow sounded like a challenge. Kyle nodded grimly. All right, grab your gear. It's go time. Delta 9 looked like a rusted blister on the edge of a war zone, half buried in volcanic ash, cloaked in static storms, and surrounded by a crater field so unstable even maps refused to acknowledge it. Beautiful, Kyle muttered as they approached in a stealth transport. Real estate value must be amazing. Signal jammers, drone mines, and a lovely note from command saying, observe and evaluate in real time. Glosh scowled. No evac, no support, no backup. Craig chirped cheerfully and took a bite out of his own armor plate. Kyle looked around the cramped cabin. Zell was vibrating nervously. Juno, the ex-sniper with gills and a temper, was adjusting her scope. Glosh was already sweating. And Kyle? Kyle was calm. Too calm. Here's the plan, he said. We do exactly what they don't expect. They touched down half a kilometer out, cloaked by ash clouds. Kyle had them crawl through lava tubes, pop up like space rats, and reroute a broken weather beacon to blast static across the compound. Inside the control room, the observers from Central Command watched with growing discomfort. Are they bypassing all standard infiltration points? One officer asked. Yes, said Threx flatly, arms crossed. Did that one just distract a turret with a mirror and a laser pointer? Yes. Kyle's squad moved like chaos incarnate. They disabled a defense grid by flooding its AI with knock-knock jokes in 17 languages. They melted their way through a door using chemical foam and the leftover heat from Craig's body temperature. They lured 2 enemy patrols into each other by simulating a friendly ping on both ends. No one had ever seen anything like it, not the enemy, and certainly not Command. When they finally breached the core of Delta 9, they found the true objective, a hidden weapons cache and a downed recon crew, alive. Kyle patched up the survivors, rerouted their emergency transponders, and left behind a signed datapad labeled, You're welcome. It was the other message he uploaded that caused the real storm. He'd hacked into Command's secure channel and left them a live feed, showing him, waving, holding up a sign that read, "You sent us here to fail." Oops. The feed cut just as the evac ship roared out of the crater field, Kyle standing on the ramp, arms crossed, grinning like a lunatic as Delta 9 exploded behind them in a fireball of petty revenge and repurposed plasma fuel. In the observation chamber, silence. The kind of silence that happens when a system realizes it's created a monster. He turned the test against us," whispered one officer. Threx stared at the blank screen. That wasn't a test to him. That was payback. And Kyle? He sat in the dropship, sipping protein sludge, while Craig drooled on his shoulder and Zell hummed something that might have been a love ballad. "You think they're mad?" Juno asked. Kyle shrugged. "Probably." "Think they'll promote you again?" Kyle smirked. "I think they're about to." They called an emergency tribunal, not because Kyle disobeyed, not because he failed, but because no one could figure out how he'd won. Threx stood before the gathered brass, the highest-ranking officers from a dozen species seated like ancient statues beneath banners of conquest. They weren't there to congratulate anyone. They were there to contain an anomaly, a human anomaly. "Explain again," barked High Marshal Zorvek, who looked like a vulture with entitlement issues. Threx didn't flinch. He infiltrated Delta 9, retrieved 2 MIA operatives, seized a prototype weapons cache, sabotaged 3 enemy patrols, and did it with 0 casualties, all with an untrained cross-species squad. "An undisciplined squad," corrected Zorvek, "disciplined enough to follow him." Whispers stirred. The room hated this. Kyle Jensen, barely cleared for solo deployment, had humiliated their entire war college. And worse, he'd made it look fun. Kyle wasn't there for the tribunal. He was in a cargo bay back on base, sitting cross-legged on the floor, eating instant noodles from a heat pack. Craig was gnawing a wrench. Zell was upside down. Juno was calibrating a railgun with the intensity of a sculptor. Glosh. Well, Glosh was just napping on the floor, drooling battery acid. They'd been ordered to stand down pending review. Kyle took a slurp and chuckled. "You know," he said, "if this is punishment, I could get used to it." A voice crackled over the comm. "Cadet Jensen, report to Strategic Operations. Immediately." "Here we go," he muttered. The Strategic Ops Hall was all polished metal and stiff uniforms. Kyle showed up in a hoodie with "Eat Plasma, Not People" written on it. The silence when he walked in was physical. Threx met him at the door. "They're not happy," he said. Kyle shrugged. "They didn't give me much to work with." Inside, the room buzzed with tension. Officers stared as Kyle approached, some with contempt, some with curiosity, a few with fear. Marshal Zorvek stood. "Cadet Jensen," he said, voice like a rusted hinge, "you have repeatedly violated protocol, undermined chain of command. You disrespected centuries of military tradition." Kyle raised an eyebrow. "And won." The word echoed. Zorvek's claws tightened on the podium. "You were sent to be taught discipline. Instead, you turned your squad into a carnival act." Kyle smiled. "Funny thing about humans, sir. We perform better after you bet against us." Another officer stood. "Your tactics were unorthodox. You mocked enemy positions with holographic graffiti. They thought we were a decoy. That's why they didn't fire. Smart, huh? You used a pudding cup to jam a missile launcher. It worked. Also, it was banana-flavored. You're welcome." A murmur swept the room. Zorvek's nostrils flared. "You leave us no choice." Kyle rolled his eyes. "Let me guess. You're kicking me out?" "No." That got his attention. "We're promoting you." Kyle blinked. "What?" "Effective immediately. You are no longer a cadet. You are now Lieutenant Commander of Interspecies Tactical Unit 77. A new voice spoke from the corner. Admiral Reese, a grizzled human officer in full EDF colors. "Your mission, son," he said, stepping forward, "is to train an entire division in exactly what you just did. Creativity, chaos, human unpredictability. We've kept it bottled too long." Kyle opened his mouth, then closed it again. You're serious. We're at war, Jensen. You just proved that our most powerful weapon is the one no enemy understands, the way humans break rules better than they follow them. 3 weeks later, Unit 77 stood on the parade ground. No longer a joke squad. They had their own patch, their own quarters, their own transport. Craig wore a name badge now. Zell had started a meditation class. Juno refused to wear the new uniform, and nobody dared stop her. And Kyle. Kyle stood at the front, commander's insignia on his jacket, coffee in one hand, tactical briefing in the other. He looked at the assembled recruits, aliens, humans, hybrids, all handpicked, all brilliant, all weird. "Welcome to Unit 77, he said. "We're not here to follow the book. We're here to rewrite it." Someone raised a hand. "What's the mission?" Kyle grinned. "Simple. Win. Loudly. And if you can, make 'em laugh while you do it." Somewhere far above, in the galactic command channels, panic began to spread, because the galaxy had just learned what happens when you put a human in charge of chaos. And worse, they liked it.